Something within you has already shifted, and you felt it before you could explain it. There is a moment in every person's life when the mind begins to see beyond its own patterns, not loudly, not suddenly, but quietly, almost like a whisper you cannot ignore. You start noticing the same emotions returning, the same situations repeating, the same inner conflicts circling back. Most people dismiss this as coincidence, but in Shaolin understanding, this is the first crack in unconscious living. Awareness is not something you gain, it is something that begins to reveal what has always been there. And when it begins, it does not ask for permission. It simply shows you again and again until you are ready to look deeper. In this video, you will understand why these patterns are not random, why discomfort is often a signal of alignment, and how the ancient path of Shaolin discipline interprets these subtle changes within you. You will see how what feels like confusion is often the beginning of clarity, and how mastery does not start with control over the world, but with awareness of the self. There are truths here that are rarely spoken clearly, not because they are hidden, but because few are prepared to recognize them when they appear. If you stay until the end, you will begin to see these signs differently, not as problems, but as guidance. You are not here by accident, and what you are noticing is not meaningless. Welcome to Hengyi Chronicles. Subscribe and continue this path with us. There comes a moment when you begin to sense that who you have been is not who you truly are. Before your name was given, before roles were placed upon you, before fear shaped your decisions, there existed a state within you that was whole, undivided, silent, yet complete. This is what many ancient traditions point toward when they speak of the return to source, not a place you travel to, but a state you remember. The mind, over time, learns to separate. It divides experience into right and wrong, success and failure, acceptance and rejection. With each division, the self appears to fragment. Shaolin discipline teaches that suffering does not come from life itself, but from this fragmentation within. When you are split between what you feel and what you show, between what you are and what you believe you should be, tension is created. The monad is not something outside of you calling your name. It is the quiet presence that has never left. When it begins to awaken, it does not arrive with force. It reveals itself through a subtle pull. You feel less interested in complexity, less attached to noise, less willing to participate in what feels untrue. Simplicity begins to feel like strength. Silence begins to feel like clarity. This shift can feel unfamiliar at first. The world continues as it always has, but your relationship to it begins to change. You no longer seek to add more to yourself. Instead, you begin to remove what is unnecessary. In this process, nothing new is created. What is false begins to fall away, and what remains was always there. There is a quiet shift that happens without announcement. When places that once felt familiar begin to feel heavy, the same rooms, the same voices, the same routines, yet something within you no longer settles the way it used to. Conversations that once passed easily now feel surface level, almost empty. Noise becomes harder to tolerate, not because it has grown louder, but because your awareness has grown sharper. You begin to notice how much of what surrounds you is distraction, repetition, unconscious habit. At first, this can feel like disconnection, as if you are slowly drifting away from everything you once understood. But this is not distance, it is precision. Your mind is no longer absorbing everything without question. It is selecting, observing, refining. In ancient Shaolin training, monks do not remove themselves from distraction because the world is flawed. They do it because clarity cannot exist in constant noise. When the mind is filled with unnecessary input, it loses its ability to see what is essential. Discipline, then, is not restriction. It is the conscious act of creating space. you begin to feel this naturally, a desire for fewer words, fewer interruptions, fewer engagements that drain rather than deepen. You are not rejecting the world, you are learning how to move through it without losing yourself. This stage requires quiet strength. Others may not understand the shift. They may see it as withdrawal, but internally, something more refined is taking shape. Your attention is no longer scattered. It is becoming directed. And in that direction, awareness sharpens, not outwardly, but inwardly. There is a way of moving through the world that leaves no trace of inner disturbance, even while everything around you remains unchanged. To become the infiltrator is not to disappear from life, but to step into it with a different awareness. You are present in conversations, present in responsibilities, present in the flow of daily events. Yet something within you remains untouched. Where others react instantly, you pause. Where others absorb emotions without question, you observe them as they arise and pass. This is not indifference, it is control. In the Shaolin path, mastery was never about escaping the world or hiding from its chaos. It was about walking directly through it without being shaped by every external force. A monk could stand in the center of noise and still maintain inner silence, not because the noise had stopped, but because the mind no longer clung to it. You begin to notice this shift in small moments. A situation that once triggered frustration now feels distant, almost transparent. Words that once pulled you into reaction now pass through without weight. It is not that you feel less, it is that you are no longer controlled by what you feel. Action becomes slower but more precise. You speak with intention, not impulse. You choose your responses instead of repeating patterns. Even your silence becomes deliberate. This is the discipline of controlled engagement. You are no longer pulled into every experience. You step into what matters, and you step back from what does not out of avoidance, but out of clarity. And in that clarity, your presence changes. You are still in the world, but the world no longer moves you without permission. There is a phase in inner training where it feels as if life has become more difficult, not less. Reactions you thought you had outgrown begin to return with greater intensity. Small irritations feel sharper. Old emotional patterns rise to the surface without warning. It can seem as though you are moving backward, but in truth, nothing new is being created. What was hidden is now being revealed. This is not punishment, it is exposure. In Shaolin discipline, the purpose is not to eliminate emotion, but to understand its root. When the mind becomes more aware, it begins to illuminate what was once unconscious. Every moment of discomfort becomes a reflection, showing you where attachment still exists, where control is still an illusion, where identity is still fragile. Instead of resisting these moments, the training shifts your perspective. You no longer ask why life is targeting you. That question keeps you in conflict. Instead, you begin to observe with precision. What exactly triggered this response? What belief sits beneath it? What expectation was not met? With this approach, emotion loses its power to control. It becomes information. This requires discipline because the instinct is always to react, to defend, to justify, but mastery lies in restraint, in allowing the emotion to rise without immediately acting upon it, in watching it, feeling it, understanding it, until it passes on its own. Over time, these moments no longer disturb you in the same way, not because life has become easier, but because your relationship to it has changed. What once controlled you now teaches you, and through that teaching, something within you becomes steady. There is a quiet unraveling that begins when the identities you once relied on no longer feel solid. The roles you carried with certainty, titles, expectations, the image you presented to others start to lose their weight. What once gave you direction now feels uncertain, almost fragile. You may find yourself questioning who you are without these labels, and in that questioning, discomfort naturally arises. The mind seeks stability, something to hold on to. But in this stage, what it reaches for begins to dissolve. This is not a loss, it is a clearing. In Shaolin understanding, strength is not built by adding more layers to the self. It is revealed by removing what is unnecessary. Every label, every role, every expectation is a form of structure, useful in certain moments, but limiting when mistaken for identity. When you cling to these structures, you divide yourself. You become one thing in one moment and something else in another, constantly adjusting, constantly maintaining. Fragmentation begins here. To return to wholeness, these divisions must be seen clearly, not rejected with force, but allowed to loosen naturally. This can feel like standing without support, as if something familiar is slipping away. But what is leaving was never stable to begin with. Emptiness in this sense is often misunderstood. It is not absence, it is space. Space where you are no longer confined by fixed definitions. Space where your actions are not driven by the need to maintain an image. Through discipline and awareness, you begin to stand without relying on identity. You move, speak, and act without needing to reinforce who you believe you are. And in that emptiness, something more stable begins to emerge. Not constructed, but real. There is a turning point where you stop waiting for the right feeling to begin. Before, action depended on mood. If motivation was present, you moved. If it was not, you delayed. But slowly, something shifts. You begin to understand that feelings are unstable, always changing, never reliable as a foundation. What remains steady is discipline. You start to act without needing inspiration. The changes are subtle at first. You sit with more awareness. You speak with more care. You notice how quickly the mind wants to rush, to react, to escape discomfort. And instead of following that impulse, you pause. You choose differently. These small moments, repeated daily, become your training. In the Shaolin path, mastery is not built through occasional intensity. It is built through consistent repetition. A movement practiced once has little impact. A movement practiced thousands of times becomes part of the body itself. In the same way, your habits begin to shape your mind. How you carry yourself when no one is watching becomes important. How you respond when challenged becomes intentional. Even silence becomes practiced, not accidental. There is no need for dramatic change, no need for sudden transformation. What matters is continuity, the quiet decision to return again and again to what you know is right, regardless of how you feel in that moment. Over time, this consistency creates stability. You are no longer pulled in different directions by temporary emotions. Your actions begin to align with a deeper awareness, not surface-level desire. This is where transformation becomes real, not in what you intend to do, but in what you repeatedly choose to do. What you are experiencing is not something rare or distant. It is something deeply natural, something that has always existed beneath the surface, waiting for your awareness to recognize it. These signs are not here to confuse you. They are here to guide you. Each moment of discomfort, each shift in perception, each quiet realization is part of a deeper unfolding. The monad does not arrive from outside forces. It reveals itself through your ability to see clearly, to feel without being controlled, and to remain present without losing yourself. This path asks for patience. It asks for discipline in the smallest actions, how you respond in difficult moments, how you carry your thoughts when no one is watching, how you choose clarity over reaction again and again. This is where the teaching becomes real, not in ideas, but in daily practice. You do not need to force change. You only need to remain aware, to observe more, react less, and move with intention. Over time, this quiet consistency begins to reshape everything within you. Not suddenly, but steadily. Walk this path with calm focus. Let silence guide you. Let discipline stabilize you. And allow awareness to continue revealing what is already within. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Heng Yi Chronicles. Continue the journey with us, one step at a time, in stillness and clarity.